The aristocratic family who constructed Château de Purnon at the end of the 18th century would have employed dozens of domestic staff to cater for their every need. And the lives and work of those cooks and lackeys, those maids and servants would have centred on Château de Purnon's enormous basement. And today we're going to take you on an exclusive tour. So this huge space here was Purnon's back kitchen. It's the space where the staff would have taken their daily meals. We can still see the original stone basin. And they would have prepped food in here, not only for the aristocratic family themselves, but for everyone who took their meals inside the chateau. And over here, we can see an original 19th century fridge. We can see the racks where the cold items would have been stored. And on this side, a space for ice to keep everything cold and chilled. This is the chateau's original kitchen. We can see here the original fireplace, and at the back it has a fire back with a coat of arms for an aristocratic family from the local area. It's not the family that constructed Purnon, so it must have been bought from their place and placed here in the kitchen at Château de Purnon. Over here we've got a bread oven, but it's a much smaller bread oven than the bread oven in Purnon's outbuildings. Perhaps this bread oven was just used for the family themselves. Unfortunately, it was badly damaged when a heating system was installed in the chateau at the end of the 20th century. But with some careful work, we can restore it as part of the restoration works here in the basement. Over here, we've uncovered traces of the original paint scheme that would have been here in the basement kitchen. And here in the middle of the kitchen, there would have been an enormous kitchen hob, which unfortunately is no longer here. In the mid-20th century, a much smaller hob was installed, and we can see its footprint here on the floor as a reminder of that time in the kitchen's history. This room here would have held the meat cooked in the chateau's kitchen. We can even see some of the traces of the hooks from which the carcasses would have been suspended. And we're on the northern side of the chateau, which would have kept this room cooler than the rest of the basement. And if we come through here, we see this huge cage suspended from the roof that would have kept cheeses and dried meats safe from rodents. Along this corridor, we come across a series of cupboards. And these cupboards would have stored the personal effects of some of the maids and the servants who worked down here in the chateau's basement. And if we open them and look inside, we can see their initials, a little hint of the people who originally worked here at Château de Purnon. In French, this is called a mont-plat, or in English, we'd call it a dumb waiter. And it's a pulley that would have brought dishes cooked here in the basement up onto the ground floor of the chateau so that they could be served warm in the chateau's dining room. It still works today. It was added at the end of the 19th century. And this corridor that was created at the end of the 19th century to install the dumbwaiter has proved invaluable for us to get all of the infrastructure and the plumbing between the different levels of the chateau. And through here we come across a secret staircase that would have enabled staff to ascend discreetly between the basement and the chateau's dining room. This room here would have been the cook's original bedroom. That's right, the cook actually slept in the basement. Now, in an 18th century French chateau, the cook was actually a highly ranked member of the household's domestic staff. And while it might seem really unappealing to have your bedroom in the chateau's basement, with the hob and the fireplace continually kept warm, this would have been one of the warmest rooms in the chateau. And with the restoration works underway, this room has become a storage space for all of the things that we've found abandoned in Purnon's extraordinary basement. Over here, boxes that give us a clue for all of the produce that would have been purchased for the kitchen. This one, moutarde française, French mustard. These glass tubes would have held spices and grains. A mandolin for fine slicing. A coffee grinder. Here, this box from the nearby town of Angers, from a French épicerie, which is a bit like a specialist grocer. This wire basket would have been used for collecting eggs. And look in here. These are moulds for madeleines, which is a small French cake made from eggs. What's this one here? Oh, this is tea imported from Ceylon or modern day Sri Lanka. It's still got its wax seal on the top. Over here we've got moulds that would have been used for cakes. And these are old meat grinders, probably from the end of the 19th, early 20th century. We can see the brand on the side, Husqvarna. This one's come from Sweden. This one's a French brand manufactured in Paris. And the kitchen of every French aristocratic family would have housed a set of copperware. And here at Château de Purnon, we've uncovered an extraordinary collection. Frying pans, saucepans, pots, the most beautiful handcrafted pieces. These ones that would have been used for cooking fish. And the most amazing thing about the pieces that we've uncovered from Château de Purnon is that we can actually identify exactly which family they were originally manufactured for. Because on these lids they engraved the name of the de Goyon family, who owned and lived at Château de Purnon in the middle of the 19th century. And here we come across this enormous heating system. It's called a calorifière in French, and it was installed at the end of the 19th century. It was coal-fired, and it would have blown hot air, controlled through this system of vents, and then sent through this conduit that you can see above me, pushed into the rooms on the ground floor and the corridor on the first floor of the chateau. And look, behind this door, a latrine that would have been added at the end of the 19th century when the chateau had plumbing installed for the first time. And the door here would have originally been placed here, and it's got a little chalked note on the back to remind people to make sure that they close off the flushing mechanism when they're finished. When this was first installed, this must have been a real luxury for the domestic staff working here in the basement. Prior to that, they had to exit out into Purnon's dry moat and use the cold and drafty latrines that were installed in the chateau's walls. And in this room, we come upon the reminders of that heating system that we were looking at earlier. The rough cut coal here that would have fed the system. Here, kindling bundled from when Purnon's lime trees were pollarded each winter. These are this room's original windows, and we've taken them down while the restoration work continues around us. It's as though when the heating system stopped being used, perhaps in the 1920s or the 1930s, people just walked away from this space and almost no one's been in it ever since. We've arrived under Purnon's bridge, which traverses the dry moat. This would have originally been an entrance into the basement, but it was blocked up in the 20th century. And if we look carefully on these walls, we can see some of the original paintwork, which tells us that this room was actually quite formally decorated. It probably served as the main entrance into the chateau's basement from the dry moat. So there you have it. An exclusive look at Purnon's enormous basement. And we've really only looked at just over half of it. The western side of the chateau contained the Marquis's enormous wine collection. But that's a tour for another day.